Paul Wuh from Samsung Securities. Thanks a lot for joining us, Paul. Well, tell us about what your view is here.
Yeah, we do think that the number of internet users in China will continue to grow. As you mentioned, there are over 420 million now, and we expect it to grow to over 1 billion within the next 10 years.
Right, and you've got to look at the companies, I suppose, and which side can they monetize the internet and leverage that, and which of the companies do you have in mind?
That's a good question. I think that the two most leverageable ways are either online gaming or advertising. They're both, at this point, quite similar as far as the amount of revenue that is being generated by these two segments. And obviously, Tencent is in both. You had mentioned Tencent as being one of the largest internet companies in China. They're both in online gaming, which represents about half of their revenues. They're also in advertising, which is only about 10%. Some other companies that will do well on the advertising side, of course, are Baidu. We have a buy on Baidu, and we think that's a fantastic company. It's obviously involved with the internet search business with close to 70% market share in the Chinese market.
Yeah, also e-commerce. What about that? That's a third sort of revenue stream you can have.
Exactly. E-commerce is a third revenue source. Right now, it's relatively small compared to the other two. And they're also focused more on, in fact, it's a form of advertising revenues. Taobao, which is the largest e-commerce company in China, relies mainly on advertising within the platform rather than on commissions.
Okay, you mentioned Tencent with its online gaming component. Who else is competing in that field?
Yeah, the other large online gaming companies include NetEase, Shanda, Perfect World, Changyou are all the largest ones in the space. And together, these top five represent close to 70% or over 70% of the revenues for the industry.
Right. Now, can they all be successful? I suppose they can't all be successful, can they?
I think that these top five will continue to be successful. And, of those top five, the one that has been lagging this year has been Shanda Game. But, of course, Tencent has been the one that's gained the most. I think it's gone from 20% market share to over 28% market share in just 1 year. So it's definitely gaining traction and gaining speed. They're using more of the casual gaming, social networking gaming, some of the things that you see on some of the overseas online gaming platforms as well.
So what about censorship here? What role does that play, and how can it affect these businesses?
That's an interesting question. I think censorship is something that all these companies have to be concerned about. And in fact, the government has censored these companies in the past. But what the companies often do is to censor themselves. They will, on the online gaming front, they will not have too much violent content, and they will censor out all of the blogs or the news and things that any news that would be sensitive news to the Chinese government, they just would not put on their websites. Let's
also just talk briefly about foreign companies and their failure to really break China, as it were. Why is that the case? Google's probably been the most successful despite its trials and tribulations.
Right. Google has been relatively successful. They're on the search side, they're at about 25% market share. It's fallen from over 30% in the past. I think that it is difficult for them because, especially this year, the fact that they said that they would not be censoring their content. So that's definitely been difficult for them. On the online gaming front, there are a lot of foreign companies that actually sell into China, whether it be South Korean companies or companies such as Activision Blizzard from the U.S. Those are some of the top 10 most popular games. A lot of them are license agreements.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Paul Wuh there from Samsung Securities.